Welcome to SethCraft. I'm currently building a 20 by 30 workshop and it's time to do electrical. Now keep in mind I am not an electrician, so use this video as entertainment purposes and be sure to check code in your area. Alright, to begin I'm going to be in my future laser engraving studio space here, and I'm going to be doing double gang box and single gang, but also putting in some light switches as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Now obviously I don't have electricity in the building yet, so it's a bit dark. Let's start off with the light switch. So I've got my tape measure. My door is going to open in this direction, which means I want to have my switch over here on this stud. And per code, you can have this anywhere from 40 inch up to 48. So I'm going to have the top of my box at the 48 inch mark. So if I just measure from the ground up, I'm going to place a mark right here on this stud. On this first wall, I'm going to have two single gang outlets, and I want those to be at the 18 inch mark. So use my tape measure, come up here and place a mark at 18. And then I'm going to move over to this next stud over here. I'm going to do this one right here, and I also want that at 18. On this shorter wall, I also want two of my single gang boxes, and likewise I'm going to measure up from the ground at the 18 inch mark. Now you can also go ahead and place the boxes at the base of that stud as you move along. I'm going to have a double gang box here on this stud, so all of my spacing from the ground is the same, 18 inches. I'm using plastic boxes and they have these screws pre-drilled into them, ready to go into my stud. And so I'm going to use this little plastic piece right here to match up with the line that I've drawn, which is right here. And then clamps will make this job much more enjoyable. So I'm going to stick this in here and get this locked down, and that will hold it in position while I put these screws in. And that will hold it in place and look really good. All right, it's gonna be very similar installing all of these boxes for outlets. I just finished getting all of the receptacle boxes and light switch boxes and also my ceiling light boxes up here in the studio shop. So now it's time to get the main load center installed here in the utility closet. I went ahead and insulated the wall and put a sheet of 1/2 inch plywood up so that I can mount this in here. Now I'm going to have a nice off-grid battery system that's going to go over here on this side. And so I want to make sure I have plenty of room for that. And so my breaker box is going to go over here on this side. So let's get that installed real quick. I picked this up at my local hardware store. It's a 12 space or 24 circuit, and so should work out well for us here. Pull this out. All right, so the mounting holes are either here in the middle or on the side, which is good because I have a stud over here in the corner that I can use. All right, I've got a stud right here that I can use to mount this to, so I'm going to put one screw in right here. I might step in your way real quick for just a moment. There we go. And that's going to let me, I'd already run one circuit, and so I wanted to make sure I had plenty of room for this to get in there. There we go. Now I'm going to be installing all of my wires through the top up here, and then I'm going to build a chase that will hide the wires as they go up into the ceiling there. And that will allow me to keep the rest of this wall looking nice and neat as I install other things in here, such as that big battery system. Now for overhead lighting, I'm going to be using high bay lights which plug into a receptacle. And so I need to put a box up here for that receptacle. This room is approximately 10 foot, so I'm going to mark right here at the 5 foot and put my box here for this light. It's probably going to be more than one light up here. So this box is just like the others, except it is going to be hung here on the ceiling. There Now that I have all of the boxes in the whole building installed and I've got my main breaker panel installed, it's time to start running wire. I'm going to put my wire at the 2-foot mark. So this level is 2 foot tall. I'm just going to place a line there and do that on all the studs that I need to drill into. And so this box right here is where this room's power is going to come into. And so I'm going to have the wire coming down this stud, go into this box, it'll have a receptacle, and then it will need to cross into this 2x4 and this one and carry on to the next box, which is over here. I'm using a 3/4 inch spade bit to go through here. Now I was practicing with a different stud earlier and hit a screw, and so that has already dulled this, but you know what? Now that it's dull, I'm just going to keep on going. Matching up my line at the 2-foot mark, right here in the center of the board, and just going to drill through. Yeah, that's a dull bit. Now every time that I have to go from one stud to the other, I'm going to drill a hole through, and I'll show you after it's been all complete. I now have all the holes drilled between my studs in order to get the wire between these. It's time to open up these boxes because they are shut here. So I'm just popping it with a screwdriver, and that will open things up so the wire can go in there. Now this one box is going to have the wire coming in, but it also is going to have a wire coming out this direction and going up and through here. So I actually have to open up 3 spots here on this one box, and the other boxes I'll just have to open up 2. For my receptacles, I'm using 12-2 wire, and so I'm going to start this run by pressing the wire through the wall here and continuing down the line. Whenever I get this to the next box and I know the length that I need, I will then measure this and cut it to the point where it goes into the box and sticks out here 4 or 5 inches, so I have room to work with it. Okay, I have the wire down here next to this box. I need to open this up in 2 places. Do these top 2. There we go. Now I can press this wire into the box. Okay, there we go. I've got about 4 or so inches coming out of the box. And now somewhere within 6 inches, I need to put a staple, and that's just one of these little plastic or rubber with some nails on it. That would just prevent that wire from ever pulling out of that box. Now stepping back to the original box that we were working with, I want to make sure this has enough length to get down to the box and then come out of the box here by about 4 inches or so. Let's cut about right here. And then I can take that and place it down in there. Maybe this will go through a little easier than the previous one. Now I may hold off on this staple because I probably have that wire coming down here from up top, and I will staple them together. Let's talk about wiring up the panel real quick. This yellow wire is a 12 gauge that goes to a set of receptacles over here. So what I want to do is run that straight down. It'll be inside of a chase, and so I won't have to see those wires. But I'm going to knock out one of these 1/2 inch knockouts here. There we go. Wiggle that back and forth to get it to pop out of there. Very good. I'm going to use one of these cable connectors to keep my Romex from being damaged on this metal box. And that's just simply going to be placed right here on the top. On the inside, I've got that nut that will tighten down. And now I simply take my Romex and place it into that cable connector. Bring that all the way in. And now I can use a screwdriver up here to make sure that is nice and tight, so it will prevent that wire from ever sliding around in that. I'm going to take my razor blade and cut off the Romex here, being careful not to touch the wires inside, just lightly trimming back that sheathing. I typically stay in the middle of the sheathing because that's where the ground is. Okay, you can peel that back. And then I also like to remove that extra sheathing there. Ground uncovered also. Now you can take a Sharpie and write on this up here where it's coming in to say the location of where this wire is going, or you can put an extra piece of sheathing on these wires down here, and that also lets you write on there to say, hey, these wires are going to a certain room. All right, so for the ground, I'm going to bend this over here, let it go up top a bit, kink down, and then fit into here. And so I'm going to want to trim this down just a little bit. And I can take one of these available spots over here, place that wire in there, and then tighten that down to make sure it has a good solid connection on that wire. Now the white wire is going to go over here to this bus bar, and that's going to be where the neutrals are going to go. So I'm just going to come down here, crook this up to the side a bit, and say I want to cut this about right here. There we go. Strip down this wire. Just like the ground, it's going to go into one of these available spots here, and then I'm going to tighten that down. Now lastly, we're working with the black wire, and that is going to be where the hot wire is considered. And so I'm going to put that on one of these 20 amp breakers down here. And so I'm going to also have this sneak around here, crook up a bit, and I only need to cut off just a little bit of this wire to make it fit and have plenty of extra here. Okay, once again, I'm going to strip that down about a ½ inch or so, just like that. And then this can go into the back of the breaker. And now I can find any available open spot here and just click this in. There we go, just like that right there. So that's the off position, and that's the on position. Now it's time to wire up the light switch and the receptacle on the ceiling, because I'm going to be using high bay lights to light up these spaces. So I've got a switch, as you can see right here, and that's going to go in this box. So what I have to do is take a 14 gauge wire from this box up to the receptacle on the ceiling, and then another wire will go from this box back to the main panel. And that way when I hit the switch here, it will cut off the power to that receptacle. In order to get my 14 gauge wire up to the receptacle and also over to my main panel, I need to put a hole here in this block and through the top plate up here. So I'm going to go ahead and start that. On my light switch box, I need to have an opening for the wire going in, such as that, and a wire going out. Get those opened up. I'm going to set my coil of wire on the ground here, and I'm going to run this up through the holes that were just drilled. I've got the wire right here at the box. First of all, I'm going to get this knockout opened up so that wire can fit in there. Then I'm going to place the wire in the box, give it enough room that it can be worked with, 4 to 6 inches out of the box there. And now I'm going to take one of these plastic staples, move up here to right above the box. Now you're supposed to keep this staple within either 6 or 12 inches depending on where you are. So keep that in mind. But I'm going to put it up here on the top of this rafter. Now that I have the wire where I want it up there, I'm going to bring this down into my box. And so I'm going to want to be able to staple this to the wall over here, come into the box, and still have 4 or 6 inches coming out. So I'm going to cut it to about right here. There we go. And then that will be straightened out and placed into the box. There we go. And then I will staple that to the wall here in just a moment. We now need to have the wire that goes from here to the main breaker. And so Once again, I'm going to keep my wire roll where it is and feed this up top through those holes that were drilled out. All right, now this wire is going to find its way up into the trusses and back over to the main breaker box. Now that I have the wires in this box, it's time to install the switch. So what I'm going to do is strip this down. I'm going to use the black wires to go from here to here, and that will be broken by the switch. And then the ground here will have a pigtail off to get to that, and then the white ones will just be linked together. So that's the plan here. So first off, I'm going to take my little razor blade here and cut down the middle of the sheathing, because that's where the ground is and it won't cut into the other wire. So get that off. Okay, do that on the other one as well. Now that I have these wires exposed, I'm going to use the strippers to remove some of that sheathing on there. So I have got these little push connectors that I'm going to use to wire this up. So first of all, I'm going to bring the two grounds together over here in the lower left corner and just put those straight in here. Those push in, you can see the wire come out the clear window here at the end to make sure they are totally where they should be, just like that. And now I'm going to use a small piece of bare wire to be a jumper, and that's going to, or a pigtail I should say. I'm going to bend a little hook on there, stick that in, and then I can take my switch here and place that ground right in here, just like that. Get that tightened down. So now I'm going to link the two white wires together, the neutrals. And to do that, I'm using another one of those push in. They're kind of like a Wago connector, but these are off-brand. We get those together. All right, very good. And now I just need to put another loop on the two black wires. And those are going to go between these two right here. Get that tightened down. I want so because I accidentally bought a three-way switch, I want this position down to be the light off and up to be the light on. And so I may have to keep this out for just a moment while I go test to make sure that it is in the correct orientation there when we step up here to get this receptacle on the ceiling done. In order to test this light switch, I have got one of my studio lights plugged up to that receptacle. I'm going to be using a power station over here that I can plug up to the main breaker panel, and that will simulate having power in here. So let's go ahead and turn the AC on, and then if I plug this up, the main panel will be live. All right, so now luckily the light did not come on, so that means hopefully when this switch is flipped we get light. Excellent. So I can go ahead and lock this switch into position, and that light receptacle up there will be done. I had a comment recently that said it may be difficult to drill through the California corner, and so what I've found is that the angle is okay with the drill against the OSB here, and then just angled slightly into the cavity. There we go. And that pops through with about maybe a half inch or so to spare on that board. it's time to put double receptacles here in this box. So let me show you how I do that using these push off-brand Wago connectors. So to begin, what I like to do is take my razor knife and go right here in the middle of the conduit, and that's where the ground is going to be. So you can cut that sheathing. And then we do that again over here on this side. All right, I can then peel this Romex back here, or the sheathing of the Romex. Cut that out of there. All right, remove that paper off of the wires. There's also a piece of paper over the ground, which I'm going to remove. Sometimes that piece is tricky enough you have to cut it off, but let's see what we can do here. Yeah. Okay, now because I'm using the double receptacle here, I need to have this connector with 4 different holes in it. And so essentially I'm going to connect the grounds together using the 2 middle holes. I just press that in there, and then you can look on the connector window at the bottom to see that it has gone all the way to the end. And so now I can take my wire strippers and strip these 12 gauge back. I'm only going about a 1/2 inch on all of these. All right, and now with a piece of scrap wire here, I'm going to cut about the same length as coming out of the box, so about that right there. I need 2 of those because I'm going to be pigtailing out of this box. So you could technically do the whites here and the blacks and then swap it over to these, but if one of these goes bad, then everything down the line is also going to go bad. So don't have to worry about that if you do the pigtail. All right, pull that extra wire out of that Romex. Okay, so we're going to use all 3 of these to pigtail into these receptacles. There we go. All right, so my wire strippers have a hole at the top you can stick the wire into and use that to bend this wire. And so one side is going to go on one side of that push connector. And then I will be pulling more out of this. All right, that goes on the other side over here. And now I'm going to take these 2 black wires and bring them over to this side of the box, and the 2 white wires will go over to this side of the box here. You can use these connectors once again going to the 2 middle holes. And then lastly, the 2 black wires go over to the right side of the box here. All right, got all those in. Now I can turn the ground up under like this, because these are going to connect onto those outlets there. And then similar to how we did the ground, I'm going to strip the wire off of these pigtails here. Okay, just like that. And that's going to go into one side of the black connector. And lastly, I'm going to do the same with the white wire. 2 different pigtails to get over to those 2 different receptacles. All right, now it's just a jumbled mess of wires, but I'm going to take one of these receptacles. I like to start with the ground first, so I'm going to place that in here. Get that tightened down. Okay. And now either one of these can be used for the white wire here. Bend that back into the box a little bit. Stick this up here. Now I know it's on the other side, but just to believe me that I am getting this put over here. So the silver color screw is for the neutral or the white wire, and the brass colored screw is for the hot or black wire in this case. All right, so now I need to move one of these black wires over here to attach to this side of the receptacle. Probably could have used longer pigtails to make this easier, but it is done now. Now the other screw on this, I'm just going to hide back in here, keep it out of the way. Now once again, do the same thing by putting the ground in first. Okay. Next is another one of the white wires. And then lastly, I'm going to sneak that last black wire around to this side and get it attached over here. And now the task of pressing these into the box. And the main thing is you got to make sure that the ground doesn't stick up to touch the black wire anywhere. All right, that one's looking pretty good. Anyway, you get the point. That's how I wire up one of these double gang boxes with receptacles here. And that should do quite well. Now the end of the run receptacle is a lot easier to work with because you don't have to have those connectors. I'm just going to cut down the middle of the wire here so that I can remove that sheathing. Just like that. Get the paper off of there. Also remove it on the ground wire. And remove, about an inch of this sheathing here. Okay. Use the hole in my pliers to make that loop again. And do the same in the ground. Okay. Once again, I like to start off with the ground. Get that tied in. White wire goes over here to the silver screws. Black wire goes over here to the brass colored screws. All right, and that's done. It's just a matter of pressing it back in here and tightening it down. I've been working hard without you to get the rest of the building wired up, and there's one last task that I have to do before I show you around with all the work that I've done. And that is to use these little protective plates to cover up where I have run the wire through the 2x4 stud wall. So basically, if I were to put a nail or a screw into the wall in the future, it would hit this instead of going into my wire, hopefully. So let's go ahead and install these real quick. This metal plate will just go right here where I have the wire going through the wall, and that will just be hammered into position. So I'm just going to line it up here with the studs and then tap it with the hammer. There we go. Now I have to do that on every stud that is exposed here with the wire going through, both the front and the back side on these interior walls. And on the outside walls, of course, it'll just be there on the surface that I can get to. I'm about 50 of those protective plates shy. I'll have to purchase those and get the rest of my 2x4s covered here. Let's go ahead and take a tour around the entire workshop, and I'll show you the electrical work that I have finished up before we close this video out. Let's start by going into the room that we've been working on here. So right off the bat, you'll see that I have two light switches. One is white and one is gray. This one is an entirely different battery system for off-grid. It essentially just goes up here to this box and we'll have a single light up here. And that's going to be all that that does. Down here, this one then goes up to that receptacle up there. And I'll have some high bay lights, which will be nice and bright here in this space. So moving along here, I've got these outlets on this wall. Swings around over here and have these outlets over here, and then I've got outlets here. Now behind this, let me see if I can show you here. I have got a, yeah, I can't show you. Well, it's down in there. That is a circuit that is also going to be off of that separate system. Anyhow, wire goes around there and feeds the outlet on that wall. All right, that concludes this room. Let's move over here to the future office space. When you first walk in, there is an outlet right here, a light switch right here, and that, just like the other room, will then feed this one receptacle up top for some high bay lights. If I need any more lighting in here, I would just plug them up to the receptacles and be good to go. Now, I don't have this wire run yet because when filming this video, I don't have the siding on, and so I can't push that through yet, but I will have to do that before I can call the electrical completely done. As far as the outlets goes, I've got the double box over here, double box there, and then a double box over here to give this room lots of power. Now that gray outlet, like I mentioned before, is on the separate battery system. And then we've got one over here on this wall. And like I showed you before, we've got that wall as well. Now, you'll notice that I have a gray light switch over here, and that is going to feed one of those lights right up here. Kind of like an emergency system. If my main battery power goes down, I'll still have something to work with. All right, I'm not going to show you my box wiring over there because that's more advanced than I'm ready to show you. This is kind of like just a basic walkthrough. So once again, I've got the gray light switch there, which will do one on this side. And then there's a receptacle down there. Inside the utility closet, I have got the same kind of system, the white and the gray, just one outlet down on this one. And then up here on the top, I've got those two, which will be on separate systems. Moving over here to the electronics review station of this workshop, I've got a double outlet there. I've got one of the gray ones over there, and then a double right down there. And then I've got the main room light switch over here, and that goes up to another one of those receptacles for some high bay lights. And lastly, this over here is very similar to the other side. Got that one outlet right there, or one light switch, which goes up to a single receptacle for high bay lights. And then you've got power that wall, this wall, there's another one of those gray ones, and then there's one outlet over here. And that pretty much wraps up the electrical work here. I do have one wire hanging down over here by the door to put one outdoor receptacle on this side of the building as well. Now, I have tested out my breaker box. I've used power stations and a cord to make sure everything is working properly in here. And that concludes the wiring of my 20 by 30 workshop. What you see here actually took me almost 3 weeks to complete. It was quite tedious to put all of these outlets in. What do I have? 30 something of them in here? Actually, no, almost 35, I think, which is a lot of outlets. Takes a long time to wire those up. I am now a big fan of using those push connectors. I guess Wago off-brand is what they are. Makes things a lot easier being able to pigtail out of those instead of having to twist those wire nuts and be worried if those were going to come out or not. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for the next video while I do insulation inside of here. It's going to be nice to get these walls soundproofed, so whenever I'm doing work in here, I won't hear the echo that you're hearing right now. I'm Seth with the SethCraft Workshop, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.